Justin. Three times. Okay. Say it.
We will now call this city council meeting to order.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Let's. I'm going to call Captain Williams if he'll lead us in the pledge.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jennifer, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Avila,
Here.
Councilmember Beaver,
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan,
Here.
Mayor Bogue.
Here. All right, so I think we're going to skip the special presentation this time, right? Is that
Yes, please. Mr. Mayor, I think those folks are out knocking on doors tonight with the evacuation order in place.
okay? All right, so that takes us to an employee introduction, and I believe this is Grant.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'd like to present Fire Captain Paramedic Daniel Eicholt. So Daniel started his fire service in 2006, and he's worked his way up the chain through different CAL FIRE units. He was a firefighter paramedic in Riverside County, a fire apparatus engineer paramedic in San Mateo County, and most recently a fire captain in Riverside. Daniel grew up in Riverside, graduated from Arlington High School in 2002. He graduated from RCC's very first paramedic class. He attended Victor Valley's Fire Academy in 2005. In addition to the standard firefighting certificates, Daniel also has his BS in Business Communications and an AS in Fire Science. Daniel enjoys spending time with his family, his wife Patty of 17 years, son Jacob, son Spencer, daughter Samantha, son-in-law Andy, and 9-month-old granddaughter Madeline, and his 2 dogs, Watson and Guinness. Daniel is a skilled motocross and desert racer and rides in the senior expert class. And Daniel will definitely be a valuable asset here to the city of Yucaipa, and I look forward to him serving our community.
Good evening. I'm excited to have this opportunity to work here in the city of Yucaipa. I've had some opportunities of working here for the last couple months, and the people are great, and the community is a nice, well, tight-knit community. I'm looking forward to providing my services to you guys.
And you know what? You're a dirt bike rider, is that what you said?
I do ride dirt bikes.
I really like you. I think you're a cool guy.
That's what I was looking for.
All right. Okay.
Like acceptance somehow.
All right, we're going to have our picture taken with you.
Sounds good.
If your family's down there, they can come down. All right, so that's going to take us to public comment. I'm sorry. Okay, I guess we do have one public comment, so I'm going to call up Dee Dee Chudy. Dee Dee, if you could state where you're from and know that you're limited to 3 minutes.
Dee Dee Chudy, 37225 Oakland Road. I'm on the Trails and Open Space Committee, and I'm also president of the Yucaipa Valley Conservancy. And I've been sitting in on the AVA meetings, and we were, questionable with the change of things. But when we heard that 50% of the land would either be open space or vinified, we thought, okay, maybe we could get behind the half-acre homes, which was different than the 1-acre overlay that it is now. And then the last few meetings, we've heard of 10,000 square foot lots, 8,000 square foot lots. And it was just like, wait, everybody in the area has built their homes to have that rural atmosphere where they can get in their backyards, kids can play. There's room to stretch their legs without, getting out in the streets and stuff. And I just want to let you know that we are concerned. And I know it's not coming up on your agenda tonight. It's just a study session. You aren't deciding what acres lots they're going to be yet. But we just want you to know that as a conservancy and as neighbors who have built in the larger areas, that less than half acre, just, I don't know if we can get behind it. And I just wanted to share that with you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dee Dee. That is for item, if you want to stick around till item 26. Yeah. All right, so that takes us to the consent agenda, and I believe it's items 1 through,
It's actually, Mr. Mayor,
oh,
19, I'm sorry, typo on the staff.
right,
report.
1 through 19.
And we do have a handout, I'm sorry, for item number 19, just for the record, available to the council and in the back of the room, just for the record.
All right, so are there any items one wishes to remove for discussion on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve items 1 through 19. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that's going to take us to mayor and council member business reports. Before we get started, is there anything anyone would like to add?
No.
No? David, do you have anything?
No, not at this time.
John, you're good? All right, so that's going to take us to item number 20, and this is the Youth Advisory Committee appointments, and I believe this is for Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am here this evening as the staff liaison for the Youth Advisory Committee to recommend the appointments of Bella Samniego and Kevin Palmer to the committee. As you know, the committee continues to serve as an advisory body to you, City Council, and the intent is to improve youth involvement in city issues, activities, and provide committee members a roadmap for success. The Youth Advisory Committee will continue to recruit for the remaining at-large vacant positions. So Ms. Bella and Mr. Kevin are being recommended for appointments to the Youth Advisory Committee for a 2-year commitment effective today through September 1st, 2023. And there is no fiscal impact as a result of this action. So first, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Bella. She is currently a freshman at Yucaipa High School with a solid 4.0 GPA. Bella has been described as having a hard work ethic, community service-oriented, and being a well-rounded individual. She is also a member of the YHS Junior Varsity Volleyball team, and she plays club volleyball. Bella has strong family roots in Yucaipa and has held leadership positions in the K Kids Club, which is sponsored by the Kiwanis Club, and her interview with the committee was impressive as she expressed her enthusiasm for positively impacting teens and the city of Yucaipa. I have no doubt that she will work with the Youth Advisory Committee to advocate for the community. And at this time, I invite Bella to say a few words, after which it will be my pleasure to introduce Mr. Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. First, I just want to say thank you so much for even just even considering me to be part of this committee. It really is a great honor. So first, I just want to talk about how I just heard about this committee. My brother, Andrew Samaniego, was a part of this quite a few years ago, and he told me just how much he learned from this committee and how much it benefited him in the future, and how much he thought it would benefit me in the future. So this is where I got the idea to join the committee. So after learning more about it and just going through the process, I really just thought that I'd love to be a part of this because I want to help the community just come back together after these past few years. Because after these past few years of not being together, I'd really love to see our youth just come together and hang out, and just because we never know what's going to happen anymore. And I think it'd just be lovely for us to just come back together and just enjoy time together. And as was mentioned before, I was a part of Kiwanis, which I did hold leadership roles in, where we would create ideas and just help kids in the community and also just help our school. One of the things we did do in this was create grab-and-go bags, where we would go to the local Ronald McDonald House and give out these grab-and-go bags to just show that we wanted to help. So whenever parents would need to go to the hospital to find their kids, they could just grab something and just go to the lunch, and just so they could be next to their kid at all times. I think this would help me because I just want to continue my passion to go from this and just grow into a higher committee and just be a part of something bigger than myself. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bella. Thank you, Bella.
Thank you, Ms. Bella. And next, and not to be outdone, I introduce Mr. Kevin. He is currently a junior at Yucaipa High School with an outstanding 4.3 GPA that includes a current challenging course load. He has played on the YHS football team and is currently an outstanding employee at Chick-fil-A. And I did not originally include this in my notes, but he had the best interview that we have seen in quite a while. And not to mention that he had a very rewarding recommendation letter. So if you have a moment to read that in your packet, he had a very glowing recommendation from his current employer. So he is community service oriented, and he serves his local church and includes assisting with local clothing drives. So Kevin is passionate about the Yucaipa community, especially how he can provide a teen voice. His interview with the committee expressed his desire to give back to the community and really learn about city policies and procedures. I have no doubt that he will work very well with the Youth Advisory Committee. So at this time, I invite Kevin to say a few words, at which point we'll conclude our presentation and staff are available for any questions.
Hello. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you guys for this opportunity. Not a lot of cities give this opportunity to the youth to have their own voice heard by the city and have an impact on the city. So I would really like to thank you guys for that. Secondly, I would also like to thank you guys for the opportunity to expand my bubble. I don't want to my main goal is to not get stuck in an echo chamber of like point of views and perspectives, because a lot of my friends have a certain perspective, but this youth committee can kind of get me into a lot of different perspectives that I would really like to learn a lot about. Also, like she mentioned, the community service, I'm really excited to be able to give back to this community. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. One thing that's really consistent with these youth advisory committee members is that they're all really smart. They all have, I think most of them have 4.0s and better. They're a really bright group of kids. So we're gonna go ahead and vote on this, and then we'll have our picture taken with you. So.
I think it was a very impressive presentation. Thank you, both of you, for your willingness to serve. And with that, I motion approval for both candidates.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Bella and Kevin to the Youth Advisory Committee. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so we're gonna have our picture taken with you.
Congratulations.
I think it's also important to recognize that if it wasn't for her efforts, Diane Smith, I'll put her on the spot over here, there would be no Youth Advisory Committee. She's sitting down here. She's the one who spearheaded this whole thing, and it still goes today. And it's been, is it 12, 15 years? It's been a while, so it's all because of Diane. All right. All right, with that, we're going to move to agenda item number 21, and I believe this is for Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. According to the rules and procedures, in a non-election year, the selection of mayor and mayor pro tem shall be held at the meeting in November. This item was presented at the November 22nd meeting, but it was continued to this evening to ensure that we had all council members present for the meeting. Nominations for the office of mayor and mayor pro tem may be made by any member of the council and need not be seconded in order to be effective. Nominations will be received. Following the nominations, I will read back each nomination and call for a vote once the nomination period is closed. Selection shall be by 3 or more affirmative votes, and staff would also like to state that the rules call out that the council member shall not serve successive terms as the mayor. And after you select who the mayor and mayor pro tem will be, the change will happen at this evening's meeting. So at this time, I will now open the nominations for the office of mayor.
I'd like to nominate Council Member David Avila.
Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Bobby Duncan.
Any other nominations?
I'll second for David Avila.
Okay, I'll close the nominations, and at this time, I'll read back each nomination and call for a vote as received. So we do have a nomination on the floor to appoint Councilmember Avila as mayor. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll raise my hand.
So that's okay. So Bogue, Thorpe, and Avila have voted for Councilmember Avila to be the mayor. So at this time, the selection as mayor has been received. Congratulations, Councilmember Avila. Okay, now I'll open the nominations for the office of mayor pro tem. Are there nominations?
I'll nominate Justin Bieber.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close the nomination period. So at this time, Mayor Pro Tem Beaver has been appointed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, congratulations.
All right, so we're going to take a 3 or 5 minute break, and then we can switch around, and then we'll come back, call it back to order, city council back to order.
Are you allowed to speak about the change in zoning on the bench?
That's item number
Okay, we're back. And we're moving on to item number 22, the first reading of ordinance number 403 regarding mandatory organic waste disposal reduction requirements to the Kaipa Municipal Code. And that'll be presented by Jennifer.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Avila. At this time, due to the amount of items on the agenda, I'm just going to hand it over to Richard Nino of Yucaipa Disposal, and he's going to take you through a short PowerPoint regarding the impacts of 1383.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff, and ladies and gentlemen of the public. My name is Richard Nino with Yucaipa Disposal, here to present to you some background on this item, which relates to approval of an ordinance supporting Senate Bill 1383, short-lived climate pollutants legislation. The first thing I wanted to lay out is the agenda for this presentation. I'm going to highlight some of the objectives, some of the critical elements of the legislation, including the collection program, as well as other requirements, and then a estimated implementation timeline. Senate Bill 1383, the genesis for it is related to air quality improvements within the state of California. CalRecycle identified that organics, which includes food waste and landscape debris, that is delivered to the landfill breaks down and creates a methane gas that is more powerful than carbon dioxide. It, as part of the state's initiatives to improve air quality in the state, as being one of the important elements in our community and our long-term sustainability, Senate Bill 1383 came about to divert and recycle those organic products that would otherwise be delivered to the landfill and creating additional greenhouse gas emissions. At the center of the program are the collection programs that would be implemented for both the commercial and residential sectors. I'll touch first on the commercial collection program. That program will entail the provision of 4 separate collection containers for the appropriate or respective waste streams for trash, food, landscape debris, and recycling commodities. There are specific labeling requirements, so all new containers that are delivered to generators starting 1/1/22 will comply with the color scheme that you see here before you. On the residential side, it is a little bit different. Here, we are focusing the collection program to remain within a 3-container system in order to mitigate and prevent the addition of a 4th container and a 4th truck. The change to the collection program, there are 2 key changes, and I'll highlight those for you. First and foremost, for the green waste container that is green, we will also be accepting food waste. What we will be asking residents is to bag their food waste and place their bagged food waste in the green waste container, where it will then be extracted, processed, reintroduced to green waste material to make compost or mulch products. The second sizable change relates to the trash container. The trash container here in Yucaipa is currently beige, with some provision of black containers that we have been delivering as part of a phasing out of the brown container. This legislation does have those specific requirements for colors of containers that I highlighted earlier, and that is why we had implemented the transition of the brown container to black container. All new containers delivered that have been delivered are of the black color, and we'll be phasing out that brown barrel over the years. By 2036, all containers that are in the system for collection of solid waste or the various recyclable commodities must conform with the new color scheme and the labeling requirements that are contained therein. I will go through some of the additional program elements, including education and outreach. Needless to say, this endeavor is going to be quite substantial, where we are really changing the behavior of our generators and residential sector in particular. So we are now recovering and recycling food waste. With that, we recognize that education will be a very critical and key component, so we will have community meetings, business group meetings, meetings with folks from mobile home parks, multifamily complexes as well. The 4 bullet points that you see here are required elements that we will be including in those outreach materials, as well as the basics of the recycling programs themselves. Edible food recovery is another critical component of the program, where any edible food that is generated by restaurants or food processors will be obligated to divert and provide 20% of the edible food to food recovery organizations that can repurpose that edible food for those that are food insecure. Another noted benefit of the program, we will be working with those nonprofit agencies that work in these programs in order to expand the programs as necessary and make sure that all the stakeholders are aware of that program. Procurement is another important requirement of the legislation that will require the city to purchase recycled content paper, document said purchases, as well as see to it that the city meets its requirement in purchasing its fair share of compost and mulch or other recycled organic products that are generated from the recycled organic endeavors. That could include renewable natural gas as well as electricity that is generated from biomass conversion projects. Another requirement is enforcement. It is expected that the city will implement enforcement measures so that after a 2-year period of education and outreach, generators are reminded of the specifics of the collection and recycling programs and to assure that those generators are recycling properly and accordingly. There will be a series of audits and waste assessments and the like that we are responsible as a jurisdiction and as your partner to facilitate in making sure that all of the recycling programs are being done as they are required and recording all of that information. Speaking of recording and reporting, this slide here highlights all of the required reporting elements that need to be provided to CalRecycle within a specified time frame, which I think is about 72 hours in order to produce all of these records. It'll be a very important administrative role and a way to demonstrate to the state that the city of Yucaipa is in fact doing its fair share to implement the program as required. And lastly, the purpose for this presentation and the item on the agenda is the ordinance and forthcoming amendments. The ordinance before you is merely one of the first steps that is required by CalRecycle that this ordinance or a similar ordinance be adopted by all cities throughout the state. Many cities are similar, like Yucaipa, in the process of implementing the ordinance for approval, at which time, after we implement the program, if we see that there are required elements that need to be modified, then that will be the time to do exactly that. Lastly, implementation timeline. We anticipate that in the first quarter, the ordinance and education ordinance will be completed, the education components will have launched, and we will begin developing the other administrative elements of the program. In the second quarter, moving forward with a contract amendment and starting some of the required reviews and implementation records. And more importantly, in the third quarter, forecasted to estimate the timeline for the implementation of the residential food waste recycling program. So that'll give us some time to educate, do some outreach, review the program with the city and get that final approval. And lastly, the reporting element is stated herein. With that, I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Nito. Are there any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
Under reporting elements slide, one of the bullet points is complaint investigation. Is Burtech going to be generating complaints to the city?
You know, that's a good question on that line item. When I first read it, I thought it was related to complaints about the 1383 legislation itself. As I delved into it a little further, it essentially is designed to capture complaints that might be received from the public about generators who are not properly recycling, who are observed not recycling properly. So it's required that the city note the complaint, report the complaint, To the degree that we can help and facilitate some of the investigation of said complaint, we will do so. However, the conclusion of the investigation of that complaint needs to be maintained by the city and recorded and then made available to Cal Recycle for their inspection. So it's complaints about generators who are not properly recycling or adhering to the 1383 requirements.
I suppose my question is there going to be somebody reviewing incoming garbage to ensure compliance at Burtec? And then will that person then track the arrival trucks, I'm assuming by number to determine the origin, and then forward a complaint to the city?
Yes, there is 2 or 3 different audit or reviews of the materials that are being collected from the generators. 2 or 3 different types. One is the material that is being delivered to the MRF or transfer station. Random samples that are specifically outlined in the regulation will need to be carved out, reviewed, characterized, and recorded. Similarly, there are route reviews that will be done out in the field where we will have cameras that will take pictures of the load as it's being deposited into the truck. If there are excessive amounts of contaminants found in those 2 first processes, then a third audit review element is actually going out into the field, recording whose containers we are visiting or observing, flip the lid, look inside, and see if the generator's recycling adequately or not. During the first 2 years, the intent is to, again, educate, inform people of the appropriate recycling, ways to recycle, and no penalties until 2024 is expected by the state. So that's how we will track some of the information about non-conforming generators recycling as they should. I trust that answers your question. If not, I can elaborate on that.
It does. As this is a new process, I'm not entirely sure staff will be able to answer my question, but do we foresee a burden to our current code enforcement's abilities to take on this new role of being the garbage police?
Well, part of the franchise agreement with Burtec includes them paying for a code enforcement officer to help with this very process. So we anticipated it in that process, and they are funding 1 code enforcement officer.
Okay, thank you.
On a follow-up, it seems like that's more targeted towards the commercial end. I think it'd be very difficult to single out a resident, and especially like in Chapman Heights or someplace like that. That would be very, very hard unless the code enforcement officer physically looked at every trash can on the pickup day. So my follow-up on that is, and this is mostly for staff, maybe this is just amusing, there's going to be an adverse impact, I think, on some of our residential communities, multi-housing residential communities, where they already have an established CMU collection site that has 1 or 2, 3-ton dumpsters. And now it sounds like we're putting them in buckets, and they may have to expand their enclosure in order to accommodate all of the extra trash cans, unless there's some other process in which they can collect it, 1-yard dumpsters or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's going to be an adverse impact on our multifamily communities, including, and we've got 42 mobile home parks, and so I see this as being kind of a mess.
I think also, and it took me a minute, while you were speaking, I was trying to find it, but Yucaipa Municipal Code 13.04.090 specifically addresses the placing of garbage in an area that is not yours. I foresee it's going to be difficult for our code enforcement to put together a case on somebody whose garbage cans are left open to the public for somebody to walk by and do what they will, go through them, add to them, remove from them. As it relates to the penalties for this, the city is now burdened with having to prove that somebody violated some type of law at some point, maybe not in the immediate, but eventually. And I think that's something we need to be cognizant of, perhaps step up enforcement on that so that people are not going through commercial or residential garbage bins when they're on the street, because that actually is a violation of our municipal code. Many people think that once it's on public and put out, it's open to the public, which is not the case per our Yucaipa municipal code. So I think in this education effort, we also need to educate our populace that you can't go dumpster diving, if you will, I think is the term that's commonly used, as this that will open up that reasonable doubt as to, that's not mine. I put it out there and it was in compliance with the law, prove that I wasn't. So something we can cognizant of.
So just a general response to the two questions. Number one, these are certainly some of the issues that have been raised with Cal Recycle, and they've elected to move forward in this mandate approach regardless. And part of our effort during this education period, this time period that Richard talked about, is going to have to be to kind of document those challenges. We think we can resolve some of the issues relative to the size of the garbage areas, the trash areas, enclosures with, given the fact that they've already got commercial dumpsters or commercial buckets, if you will. But there are a whole host of other issues relative to enforcement and some of the other things that I think cities are going to be tasked with trying to demonstrate during this education period, during this outreach period, and during this test case period. So those are definitely challenges that were brought up by our representatives and others with Cal, in discussions with Cal Recycle. As Richard mentioned, this is another state mandate without state funding, I might add.
Unfunded state mandate.
Yep, and they're looking for cities to, I guess, document those challenges over the next couple of years. So.
Well, both Councilmember Duncan and I both sit on solid waste, and these are all items that we've discussed, and we've actually been talking about this for a number of years. We saw this coming, I don't know how long it's been. In fact, last year they passed, I believe it was SB 619. Correct. That actually delayed the implementation of this because they knew how burdensome this was going to be. But now we're here. So it's not something that the city wants to impose on its residents. It's just something that's coming down by the state, and I just want you guys to know that it's not city, it's the wonderful state of California.
So I think it's important. I know that as Richard was explaining all that, you kind of sort of understand it, but the bottom line is what he said, cameras on the truck to find out if you're throwing your leftovers out of your refrigerator into your trash can like you normally would do. They're going to start sending around code enforcement to your trash can, looking in your trash can, and then giving you a citation if you're not following the rules. And I think it's important that the residents of Yucaipa understand we have no say in this whatsoever, and your rates will go up, and all the complaining about the city councils doing this and that, like Greg said, it has nothing to do with us, but this is state mandated. So as long as we follow the state mandate, then eventually we won't be able to leave our house. We'll have to stay in the house all the time.
I have a question for Burtek. You talked about the education was going to be a process to make sure the public is aware of the different rules and guidelines they have to follow. What does that look like? The reason I ask is when we did the pickup changes in Yucaipa for the schedule for the different addresses and different zones, had a lot of people in my district complain about not getting the cards that they were supposed to be getting in the mail telling when their times were going to be changed. So what mechanism are we using to make sure that everyone gets proper notification of these changes so they have the guidelines to try to march by?
We intend to propose to the city to include a multifaceted approach to the outreach education, including mailings, social media posts, videos that we will make available to the public utilizing QR code technology. And one of the things we really want to focus on as we embark on this endeavor is working with who we believe are going to be our true ambassadors from the residential sector, and that is the youth. You know, earlier this evening, there were 2 individuals who were appointed to the Youth Advisory Committee, and that generation and the generation that's younger than them, we believe, will be our best ambassadors in the household. So we intend to focus the outreach and education with youth as well, be it at soccer tournaments, schools, presentations at school or classroom opportunities that might come up, working with the chamber to make sure they're aware as well as chamber members. So we're going to try to do everything we can, and we're welcome, and we'll entertain any additional input and ideas, because that education component will be critical to avoid any stumbles or challenges with the implementation of recycling in years to come. So that's what we intend to do.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Can I make a reluctant motion?
I need
Please.
to read the ordinance title into record before you do that.
Okay.
That the city council approve first reading by title only of ordinance number 403, an ordinance of the city of Yucaipa adding chapter 8.29, mandatory organic waste disposal reduction, to title 8, health and safety of the Yucaipa Municipal Code, and making a determination of exemption under CEQA.
That's my motion.
You have a motion here, second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Duncan. If no further discussion, I'd like to say, Richard, thank you very much. None of this is directed at you or Burtech. It's just, as you can tell, a sense of frustration of some of the stuff we just have to go with.
Understandable. Thank you very much.
If no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item number 23, the agreement for professional services, Yucaipa Pickleball Court Design Project number 11150. And that'll be presented by, who? For me. Oh, Todd, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. Since 2002, the City Council has been steadily working on increasing the city's parks and recreation opportunities within the city. In 2012, City Council adopted the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, adding two additional facilities to the city. That includes the 13th Street Sports Complex and the future Dunlap Park. This update also provided both a snapshot of the supply of recreation facilities available to the residents, but also an inventory of those such facilities. In 2016, the master plan was updated, but at this time there was no indication that the demand for a pickleball facility would be needed within the city. In the fall of 2018, the city, along with the USA Pickleball Association ambassador, discussed the use of 7th Street Park pickleball courts as a site for temporary pickleball use. In the fall of 2018, the courts at 7th Street Park and Avenue Y Park were configured to include permanent pickleball court striping. As part of the fiscal year 21-22 budget process, City Council prioritized the development of a permanent exclusive pickleball facility to be located at the Yucaipa Community Park and authorized $400,000 for the design and construction of the courts. As you can see here on the first slide, this is the Yucaipa Community Park. The proposed pickleball courts are going to be on the west side of the park, just northwest of the parking lot. They will be on a slope, but the reason they are on a slope is this line right here delineates a boundary change in regards to property boundaries. This area right here is owned by the county of San Bernardino, and this area here is owned by the city. When staff was doing research for a facility, we looked at possibly talking to the county and obtaining this part of the facility or using it as a lease. But again, it's a pretty good agreement and stated in there that this area is to be used for overflow parking, which has been done in the past. And anything that is built on this county property, just like anything built on the city property, once completed, becomes property of that such agency. So we sat down and decided we're going to move it up, higher up the slope, to give it also a better vantage point from Oakland Road. This is a conceptual plan developed by one of the Pickleball Association members.
The conceptual plan does consist of 11 courts. If you notice, the 3 middle courts here are a little bit more area, a little bit bigger in area. This is because this is going to be considered or called the center court with permanent bleacher seating here. But these 3 courts here will also allow wheelchair access for wheelchair pickleball. That is something that the Yucaipa Pickleball Incorporated has said that they would like to see that for future use in regards to their programming. The proposal is going to include the development of the courts that have lighting as well as shade structures. But again, when we come to construction aspect, that may vary depending on the cost. This is a view of the area looking north from Oakland Road. It will be up on this area here. The delineator right there is right where the parking lot ends, so it will be up there on that slope. This is a cross-section of the conceptual plan. As you can see, there is quite a bit of slope coming down. We have in the temporary design or the preliminary conceptual design, different levels of retaining walls that will be developed. We like this idea versus one big flat, huge wall that we would have if it was not a tiered structure. This we're hoping is going to be more cost effective. And like most of the other brickwork within the city, it will be cut stone and will be graffiti coated. So any graffiti on there will be able to just be hosed off and cleaned up. In November of this year, staff received 3 proposals for the professional engineering and design services for the development of the pickleball facility within the city. The Development Services Department staff reviewed and evaluated submittals and determined that RHA Landscape Architect Planners to be the preferred vendor to design the city's pickleball facility. Staff is recommending the City Council award a contract with the RHA in the amount of $66,925 for a total design project costing the amount of $71,925. This will leave approximately $322,000 for the construction of the pickleball facility. This concludes my report, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Todd. Are there any questions of staff?
I'll move the item.
Okay, we have a motion to move the item, approve it. Are there any last-minute public speakers? I have no public speaker comment, so just to make sure.
I'll second.
And we have a second. If no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to item number 24, the adoption of urgency ordinance number 404-U, establishing interim standards for the implementation of Senate Bill 9. And that'll be for me. Or is that Ben?
I'll be taking the presentation. Yeah, so before you is the adoption of urgency ordinance number 404-U, specifically for Senate Bill number 9. Do want to note, I am merely the messenger with SB 9. I did not write it, the state law. However, as council may know, this is a new housing law that was signed by the governor on September 16th, 2021, is going to be effective come the new year. This law essentially has kind of 2 different provisions within it. One is essentially allowing a 2-unit development on any single-family zone property, or as part of that as well, a urban lot split. So any lot, provided it meets kind of the minimum lot size under state law, which is about a little over 3,000 square feet, could also be subdivided through a ministerial process, meaning that there's no public review for this project. It's purely, do you meet the requirements? Yes, and then it's approved. And so as part of this, did want to provide a urgency ordinance that would essentially go into effect come the start of the new year. Since SB 9 has come into law, the city staff, my planning division, has received a number of different calls from property owners that are interested in what SB 9 may permit within their property or those different opportunities. And so with that kind of interest, as well as the potential capacity for these SB 9 projects, both the 2-unit or the urban lot split, we wanted to make sure that we had a draft ordinance or a ordinance in place come the start of the year so we can appropriately review and respond to these applications appropriately. Given the short turnaround of when SB 9 went into law, going through the formal ordinance development process, going through the public hearings would not allow us to have an ordinance in effect on the start of it. Plus, as part of the ordinance, we're allowed to provide objective design standards. And so as we work through finalizing those standards, we want to make sure that we spend enough time to essentially develop the appropriate ordinance that can help protect the city with these particular projects. And so this urgency ordinance is proposed tonight to allow us to have a standard in place, and then we will come back to city council with a formal ordinance as further review on the state law and the objective design standards come in. I do want to briefly just kind of go over some of the processes associated with this that would be carried through in this urgency ordinance and most likely within the permanent ordinance. One is as part of the 2-unit project. Essentially, we would utilize the city's land use compliance review application. It currently allows for 2-unit projects, provided you're double the minimum lot size. So in this case, it would still apply for SB 9 eligible projects as well. And then the tentative parcel map with no notice would be included for those of the urban lot splits. And then as noted, we are permitted to have some objective design standards that essentially, if you meet this requirement, exactly, there's no discretion or no interpretation needed of the code, then it's able to move forward, and so the city can apply those standards appropriately. And so with this, staff did utilize, as part of the objective standards, kind of a modification of our objective design standards that we already have for multifamily projects, then added some additional ones that would be more germane to the 2-unit type projects. Do want to note just quickly as well, these are not set in stone. We will be finessing these further as part of the formal adoption, but wanted to get what we do have, essentially using that as a building block so that once we get initial applications and we have something to review and making sure that at least some standards that the city had already approved is in effect for these. And then as part of the urban lot split, one of the requirements, so as I mentioned, the minimum lot size, each unit has to be, or each lot has to be at least 1,200 square feet. And then as part of it, we do identify that the split between the two lots, they do have to be of similar size, 48 and 52% of the net lot of the initial parcel. So essentially making sure that when you create an urban lot split, you don't have one this really tiny lot that's created, but at least making sure that this more uniform design approach for that, making sure that the setbacks and other kind of lot coverage requirements are feasible within that context. And so with that, the ordinance is presented tonight. I do also want to note, as part of the environmental review, state law specifically does identify the SB exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And so CEQA is not a part of this project, or it's not subject to CEQA review. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then I can read the ordinance as well, the title, but happy to answer any questions. Again, I am merely the messenger with the SB 9 stuff, but did try to throw as much elements that the city has already identified as priorities for residential design into this so that at least we can maintain some level of quality for these individual projects that come through.
Thank you, Ben. Are there any questions of staff?
Is it commonly understood, you think, among the citizens of Yucaipa, just exactly what this SB 9 is all about, especially as it relates to the North Bench and the RL1 zoning?
I think there have been some people that have called that kind of heard about, hey, I can add some additional units or I can subdivide my property, that maybe they had reached out to staff before and they didn't meet the minimum lot size at that time. I don't know if the full weight of this state law has been understood by many of the community, but it is, I think, something that will gain more information as people start seeing this kind of come through. So far, it's just been more kind of interest. Hey, I've heard about this. Some of the questions generally have ended up being more towards ADUs where that might have met their requirements better, and so they're pursuing that instead. We have received a number of inquiries, and so wanted to make sure that we're proactive in getting something on the books so that we can respond appropriately.
Is this going to affect the ADU law that the wonderful state has already implemented, or is this going to affect that?
No, the ADU law would still be there, and so it would be if you are a property owner with a single-family property, you would have essentially the option of pursuing the ADU provisions, or in this case, the urban lot split or second unit provisions instead.
Mayor Pro Tem Beaver, you have anything? Council member? I do have a couple questions. You did say that there was a number of calls that came in expressing an interest in this. Can you give me a sense of whether it'll be well-received and people are actually gonna, what kind of numbers are we looking at maybe in the future, if you have any sense of people who want to do this?
I don't, so the calls we received were generally people that were excited about the additional opportunities that their property may provide within the state law. I don't know the number of calls. It was, so my staff had received different calls and so we've been discussing SB 9 and how to best utilize, or how to best frame a ordinance for our city to help respond to those and get information. And so I had my staff also attend a workshop on SB 9 so that they can make sure that they're well versed through the state law so that they can respond to questions accurately and effectively from those property owners.
Okay, and one more question. First, do we have any restrictions or design criteria that prohibits flag lots?
So the ordinance right now has some minor language. However, we did not include no flag lots if it's created as part of an urban lot split, if the subject property is adjacent to an alley located on a corner or a through lot. So if there's another right-of-way accessible, then you would not do a flag lot. Otherwise, it may be done within a standard interior parcel.
I would like to see some language that prohibits flag lots personally. I think that's not good design. It's actually can be a detriment for public safety. So if we can't put it into the urgency ordinance, maybe we can put it in something more permanent after the new year and we get the final. If that's okay, gentlemen, unless you have any objections.
Well, I'd like to see us just ignore SB 9 altogether.
That would be optimum.
But if the law says that you can do it, then you can have flag lots too, right? I mean, if you can.
We can, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I think with respect to the flag lot issue, we can certainly look at that as part of the permanent ordinance and see what would be appropriate in order to fit within the state's mandate here regarding SB 9.
Okay, good enough.
And then I would say just to Councilmember Duncan's comment, since SB 9 goes into effect on January 1st, if we don't have provisions in place, property owners can still utilize that. So we're trying to have at least something that we can point to make sure that there's at least appropriate standards that we have that's appropriate.
Okay, we do have a public speaker on this, Denise Work. Denise, you have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself and where you live.
Hi, I'm Denise Work. I live at 37202 Lime Kiln Drive here in Yucaipa. I wasn't prepared to speak on this tonight. I didn't even know it was coming up, but this has really been a burr in my saddle since I've been a planning commissioner here for years. And the state of California, in my opinion, has manufactured a housing crisis. And they're trying to put all of this regulation on this entire state, and people that live in rural areas are not even being considered. The absurdity of someone saving their whole lives, working hard, buying in a nice neighborhood with a little bit of land, such as, let's say you live in Hidden Meadows. I don't, but let's say that you do. And the guy next door builds a duplex, and he does this little lot split thing, and then he can put ADUs in the back as well, and he rents them all out. I mean, this is it's just absurd, and I think we all know that, and I think Councilman Duncan's right, and my only reason to come up here and say, yeah, I agree with you, and I think everybody else here thinks that this is ridiculous. But city attorney's not going to like me saying it, but I know that there are a number of cities, particularly up in the San Joaquin Valley, I don't know around here, But I know there are a number of cities that have filed suit on this matter, and I would like to urge the council and the city to consider doing that. I understand you have to still pass the ordinance, you have to work within the framework that you are given, but at the same time, I would encourage you to join a suit against the state of California. This is not legal. They are trying to take all of our personal controls away, and Sacramento is going to legislate everything. This is wrong. Why have a city council or a planning commission or any other of our local controls when they're going to dictate to us education, housing? I mean, the control is just getting out of hand, and if we don't get involved and flex our muscles a little bit, I just think that it's only going to get worse. They've taken our rights away. So just want to encourage you in that respect.
Amen, sister.
Thank you.
To get a little perspective on the Housing Committee in Sacramento on the Senate side, I believe the committee members are from San Francisco, Berkeley, and Oakland, and there's a number of others from Los Angeles and so forth. So they're implementing their policies on us. So,
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just doesn't go that far, but perhaps I'd like to point out that this council has, I think, been the first city council to support ACA 7 at Proposition 21-0016, both of which would go to a ballot measure in November if successful, that would essentially give local control back to local agencies as it relates to a conflict between state law and local ordinances that are established under certain criteria. And so this was, I believe, the first council to support both of those measures, one being an amendment to the Constitution being requested through the legislative process, the other being a ballot initiative. But the language is pretty similar in both of those endeavors.
Before I invite you to speak, Mayor Pro Tem, Ray, isn't the California League of Cities, Cal Cities, also supporting one or both of those? I can't remember now.
Absolutely. Actually, they decided not to take a position ultimately on those two endeavors, thinking, and I think the stated reason was they were looking for a little bit different language. They certainly supported local control, enhanced local control, or getting back some local control, but some of the language in those two endeavors didn't quite meet the board's satisfaction, if you will, in how to do that. So,
Mayor Pro Tem Beaver?
This council also, for what it's worth, did adopt a resolution, I believe, earlier in the year, stating our position on the importance of local control, also joining a coalition for local control that was spearheaded by a councilman out of Torrance. So I agree with you. I think you're right. Your words are, you're preaching to the choir, and we're going to do everything we can. I think I can speak for my colleagues up here. We don't like it, and we'll do what we can to fight it.
Yes, sir.
Well, and I will add to the general public, I think one of those particular initiatives is gathering signatures now, and if they don't get enough signatures to get it on the November ballot, then it'll die. But I've already signed it, so I encourage everyone to sign that petition to get this on the ballot to maintain local control at the city and not the state.
Ben, did you already read the ordinance? The reading?
Not yet. I will read it now, and I do want to note, as part of the urgency ordinance, a 4/5 vote is required. But urgency ordinance number 404-U, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa adopting emergency regulations related to urban lot splits and housing units built in accordance with Senate Bill 9 and declaring an urgency thereof.
Mr. Mayor, if I just might add, this, again, is an urgency ordinance. It does require the 4/5 votes. It would take effect immediately. It would be in effect for 45 days. It can then be extended for up to 10 months and 15 days for a total of 1 year. It could be then extended one more time for an additional year. So I would expect if the council passes this evening that we would be returning for an extension in January, and then return with a permanent ordinance thereafter.
Okay, so there's your ordinance. We have a motion to accept and approve.
So move.
We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? It carries. Thank you very much. These are all controversial, very, very frustrating. All right, moving on to agenda item number 25, award of contract for Phase 1 construction of the Dunlap Boulevard Bridge removal and replacement project at Wilson Creek Channel, project number 11098. Landon Kern will be
Good evening, Mayor.
presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. As just mentioned, this report is for the proposed Phase 1 construction of the Dunlap Bridge removal replacement project. I'll go over a little brief background of this project, as well as the Wilson Creek drainage area in the vicinity of the project and the Dunlap area in general. Here on the screen before you is the proposed location of this project. There is an existing bridge located crossing Wilson Creek Channel at Dunlap Boulevard. They're just upstream of the 10 freeway crossing. And in 2015, a conditional letter of map revision, also known as a CLOMR, was prepared and identified 3 projects to be completed, one of which is the Dunlap Bridge removal, to effectively revise the FEMA-designated floodplain and floodway in the Dunlap area. And this project is also included in the adopted fiscal year 21-22 CIP. And the need to remove the existing bridge is due to the fact that it is currently undersized and does not provide sufficient capacity for the Wilson Creek Channel to convey 100-year storm flows. Here is a cross-section of the existing bridge. You can see hatched the 3 box culverts that's in service now, and the proposed cross-section with the larger, wider bridge structure to be constructed, taller and wider in there to accommodate those larger storm flows. Next here is the FEMA map of the Dunlap area, extending down here in the bottom left part of the screen to our project area, where the floodway currently breaks out into the properties on either side of the channel. As mentioned previously, the CLOMR that was prepared with those 3 projects, the other 2 being the 13th Street and Avenue D low water crossings at Wilson Creek, have already been constructed. So this is the last of the 3 projects that needs to be completed in order to formally revise that FEMA map. This next screen I just flipped to is a proposed map that was identified in that CLOMR with the removal of the Dunlap Bridge. I'll go back one more time so you can see the existing floodway. And then forward once more here, you can see with the removal of that Dunlap Bridge, that bottleneck in the flood channel, we do see that effective floodway being reduced into the channel itself and not breaking out. And so to clarify even further, it's hard to see on this map here, but with the new bridge and the existing bridge removed, there are 7 properties removed from the floodplain in this area. That's the area designated in the lighter blue portion of this map. And also 21 properties removed from the floodway down closer to just the immediate area around the bridge structure itself. And the removal of the bridge is also identified in the development agreement with ACAA, the developer of the property at the northwest corner of 14th Street and Oakland Road, also known as the Yucaipa Gateway Center. Currently, they're in construction with the beginning the phase 2, which includes a hotel. The bridge removal was identified in that development agreement as the city's obligation. And it's important to note that it's a 2-step process for the FEMA designated floodplain and floodway map revisions. Step 1 was completed with the CLOMR, and step 2 requires the development and approval of a LOMR, which is planned to be completed concurrent with the construction of the phase 2 bridge improvement project, and would be submitted to FEMA for approval and that formal map revision that would be reflected similar to what we see here in the CLOMR, finalizing that process. And the replacement of the bridge itself in addition to that requirement to remove it for the benefits to the floodplain and floodway, is driven by the need to maintain the critical utility corridor crossing Wilson Creek here, as well as a third point of access to the Kaipa Gateway Center. And that third point of access was a requirement for the conditional use permit for this development at that time. The new bridge will also provide connectivity to the trail network and ADA access across Wilson Creek at this location, in addition to serving as a one-way exit from the Yucaipa Gateway site. And the professional services agreement for the design of these proposed improvements was completed by DUDEC, and that was awarded by council in mid-2019. The Phase 1 improvement plans have been completed, and staff's working with San Bernardino County Flood Control for the final approval of the Phase 2 improvement plans. I'll take a moment to highlight the proposed phasing that we're recommending. Phase 1 involves the removal of the portion of the existing roadway on top of the bridge that crosses here, and maintaining a portion of that existing culvert in place to accommodate the storm flows. This Phase 1 involves the construction of the new bridge itself, the superstructure and the abutments on either side of the channel, and allows us to protect the existing utilities that are in service in place through Phase 1 of this proposed project. And then the Phase 2 scope of work, which would be able to take place at the conclusion of Phase 1, would involve the transfer of those existing utilities into the new bridge that's being proposed for Phase 1, removing the existing portions of the bridge, the street and drainage improvements that transition to these new improvements, and finally the channel improvements to tie into the new bridge that's being put in with the Phase 1. As we saw on the earlier slide here, the proposed bridge structure will be about 5 feet higher than the existing bridge, and involves the widening of the channel section underneath the bridge to accommodate those storm flows. And the Phase 1 allows the existing channel and box to convey that storm water through construction and maintain those utilities in place while we get ready for that ultimate Phase 2 construction to occur. Just about a month ago, at the October 25th City Council meeting, Council found the project to be categorically exempt, and staff filed that notice of exemption immediately following that meeting, and has subsequently applied for the resource agency permits to complete the Phase 2 improvements, requiring us to get access down into the channel and do the work in the channel itself. The Phase 1 project was advertised for construction bids on October 27th, and we received 7 bids on December 7th, with the lowest responsible bidder being Wright Construction Engineering Corporation of San Marcos, California, in the amount of $1,258,660. And upon review of the bid documents and checking references provided with that package, staff is recommending award of a construction contract in this amount for these improvements. In addition, the proposed construction budget includes an amount of $200,000 for contract contingency, $165,000 for construction contract administration and inspection, testing and staff time, what we usually refer to as construction engineering, for a total proposed construction budget in the amount of $1,623,660. And the proposed construction engineering portion of the Phase 1 project budget highlighted there includes a proposed B&R Consulting Engineers Agreement Amendment and a proposed DUDEC Agreement Amendment, and I'll highlight those 2 recommendations with this report. Since the award of the professional services agreement to B&R Consulting as a result of a competitive RFP process, B&R has provided construction management and inspection services on recent larger scale city projects, including bridge and drainage projects, some of which include the Wilson 3 Phase 1A and 1B improvements and the Fremont low water crossing. And due to their expertise and the nature of the construction proposed with this phase, staff is proposing amendment number 2 to the B&R contract in the amount of $115,000 for the construction contract administration and inspection services to cover this phase of the project specifically. And in addition to the proposed nature of the construction here and the protection of the existing bridge and utility infrastructure, staff is also recommending an amendment to the current agreement with DUDEC in the amount of $20,000 that would cover additional design and construction support in this initial phase to support staff with RFIs, contractor submittals, and this final phase of comments we're going through with flood control coordination during phase 1, and also as we prepare to package up the phase 2 bid package for that next phase that will initiate upon completion of the proposed phase 1 project here. As shown in the fiscal table of the report, the available funding in the fiscal year 21-22 CIP is sufficient to accommodate staff's recommendations. And with that, staff is recommending that council approve items 1 through 5 in the report. And that concludes my presentation. Staff's available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Landon. Good presentation. Any questions of staff?
What's the anticipated construction time from the time you close off the roadway until you open it back up again?
We do plan to close the bridge itself during construction. We plan to have a pre-construction meeting in January, kick things off immediately, get the precast girders ordered, and we anticipate they'd be arriving on site in 4 to 6 months. So we're hoping we can complete the phase 1 in about a 4 to 6 month time frame. And at that point, we do have temporary transitions of the higher elevated bridge structure going down to the roadway, but we do plan to have that section closed off to the public until phase 2 is completed with the ultimate street and drainage improvements there.
And how long do we anticipate that'll be?
We would hope to go out to bid right at the end of phase 1 with the phase 2 bid package and initiate construction of the phase 2 immediately after and complete those improvements in about the same amount of time frame, about 4 to 6 months. So,
thank you.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
And this items 1 through 5 as recommended by staff. All right, we have a first and a second. If no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Landon. Moving on to item number 26. This is the Yucaipa Valley Wine Country Specific Plan Review. And that's going to be Ben again.
Yep. Thank you, all Mayor and City Council members. I am excited to be here tonight as a follow-up to prior study sessions in January 25th and May 24th with the City Council regarding kind of the city's approach to implementing the American viticulture area. And since those study sessions, our committee and public outreach has been very active and made a lot of progress. And so we wanted to stop by tonight with kind of where the recommendations are, get council feedback, and then direction as we move into the actual writing of this specific plan and finalizing those standards. And so just kind of as a background, kind of historically, so this effort is intended to support kind of the development of a Yucaipa wine industry by establishing appropriate standards that can help support that. So this is following the establishment or the submittal of the Yucaipa Valley American Viticulture Area petition to the federal government, which overall encompasses 30,000 acres, including the city of Yucaipa and then also surrounding communities. Right now, the AVA application with the federal government is moving up and it's getting close in action with an estimated vote in 2022. And so really the goal here for our approach has been to develop those standards so that when the application is ultimately approved, we know and can guide future vintners on what the standards should be as they develop those properties. And then 2 is really focusing on a community consensus approach. So recognizing that as we work with different stakeholders and the committee itself, not everyone's going to agree on every single perspective or idea at the same time, but trying to make sure that we have a majority support for different ideas. If there isn't that support, then we go back to the drawing board and then revise from there. And so all the recommendations that I'll discuss tonight reflect that community consensus for council's consideration. And so just briefly as an example, or the exhibit showing the AVA petition to the federal government in yellow, and then in red is the city of Yucaipa boundaries. And then as part of it, so recognizing that we do not have a winery industry that's been developed in the city of Yucaipa compared to other wine regions in the state or nationally or globally, We're trying to create a new industry in Yucaipa, create ag land that doesn't exist before. City of Yucaipa itself does not have a agriculture zoning district, and so really kind of working within those standards to, okay, what would be the appropriate zoning and how do we make this work? And so as part of it, certainly it's a new industry, and so we want to make sure that we have community engagement through this, and so the whole AVA planning outreach really focused it on a number of different outreach avenues. One is establishment of a planning committee that included city council representatives, a planning commission representatives, Trails and Open Space Committee member, EDAT member, a Wine Alliance member, a landowner representative, and then also 3 at-large members. And then as part of the efforts, the staff had provided a number of different press releases, including publication and kind of our, the quarterly community services guide on the city's website and the newspaper. We provided a number of different surveys, attended different festivals to provide information, and then also conducted a number of stakeholder interviews since kind of the initial approach of developing these strategies. And then as council may recall, we had discussed potential wine country areas within the city, largely focusing on vacant areas that could support the industry. The 2 largest vacant areas within the city is the North Bench area and then the Freeway Corridor Specific Plan area. As part of the planning committee, a lot of the discussions really focused on the North Bench itself being kind of the viable location for the main wine industry within the city, and then as part of the Freeway Corridor, that may provide other opportunities as well, but certainly would not be the prioritization of where wineries may go. And so with that, recognizing the existing zoning and then also existing approved tract maps, this area in the North Bench is zoned for 1 acre lots, or essentially single-family residential units, not necessarily agriculture. And these is an example of showing some of the different projects that are approved or that have approved tentative maps. As you can see here, doesn't really provide spaces for wineries or viticulture. And so really taking a more creative approach on how can we make this area that is undeveloped currently and support a new industry and do so within the contents of state law, which essentially says that whatever the residential capacity is now, you can't just remove that zoning, you have to keep those units somewhere. And so really the focus then is what do we do to move forward to not have this, but actually have vineyards get created within the city. And so the city took kind of a 2-stage approach or 2-phase approach. One was kind of initial research, the phase 1, which is kind of developing what would be the appropriate land use tool. And from there, through this outreach, case study examples, and some visioning is created kind of the initial direction, which was supported by City Council, which is creating the Yucaipa Valley Wine Country Specific Plan. This is focusing within the North Bench area. Kind of a few key concepts are important as part of this phase 1 direction. One is consolidating residential capacity, so recognizing no state law or the no net loss requirements of state laws. We can't lose the residential units. We don't have to add units, but making sure that that's maintained in that area and not necessarily rezoned to other parts of the community that have to then be upzoned to accommodate this. But then really also focusing on ways to create creating land specifically for agriculture purposes or open space. And really part of the direction is focusing on creating as much agricultural activity potential within that area, and then also continuing committee and public outreach activities to make sure that we're getting the community consensus through this process. And so we have been, as I mentioned earlier, really engaged in the phase 2 process, really nailing down a lot of the key regulations that would be appropriate for this North Bench area and the development of the Yucaipa wine country. And so I will go over some of the different kind of recommendations that have been provided tonight for council's discussion. Now, one of the key things as part of establishing the wine industry is while planting grapes is obviously the first step of creating a winery is having actual grapes to produce wine. That isn't the thing that makes, keeps the bills paid, doesn't keep the lights on. It really is all the other uses that go into it. It's being able to sell your product, being able to ferment the grapes into creating wine, and then other uses on site that help kind of create value so that as you're selling the wine, you have a market to sell it to and can kind of support that industry. So really is part of the bigger industry of the wine industry rather than just grapes themselves. It's making sure that we allow for everything so that those that want to invest in creating a winery can do so and actually thrive in that industry. Now, as part of the discussions, a few different kind of key high-level elements also applied. One was concerns about agritourism and traffic associated with it. And so really the focus then is prioritizing sites along existing roadways that don't necessarily go through existing neighborhoods. So Oakland Road being kind of the primary corridor and also the city's designated scenic view corridor, providing opportunities where vineyards are established there so that when you're driving along Oakland Road, that's what you are seeing is vines versus other types of development. And then using Jefferson Carter as kind of the other wine corridor, so making sure that the road traffic can accommodate that and you don't have people tasting wine on Saturday driving through existing neighborhoods. One of the other elements is recognizing that this is a new industry. It's not something that exists currently in the city, at least not to any large scale, is providing some flexibility and feedback. So essentially every 5 years, we're proposing that modifications be made or at least evaluate what's working, what's not, so that we can tailor the standards if we find something that we want to better encourage going forward. Another component is making sure that we have legitimate ad production. We want the committee certainly recognize that, you know, a commercial use that has the auspice of being a winery but not actually producing or contributing to the wine industry wouldn't necessarily be helpful. It would be kind of a false design. And so really making sure that all sites are producing grapes. And so with that, a requirement for any kind of winery sites to have 75% in agriculture. And then the last component is really creating standards that can encourage that entrepreneurial spirit. It is a new industry, and so we don't want to necessarily over-regulate that industry, which would in turn stifle development. And so it's creating opportunities for those that want to invest to do so and be successful and not be necessarily constrained to a degree that limits that investment potential in the first place. So this is the site exhibit showing the wine corridor streets, kind of showing Oakland Road as the primary street and then tying from there. So all the kind of agritourism traffic would then be focused along Oakland Road, which does have the capacity to support that, not necessarily going through other neighborhoods to support from there. And then from here, kind of tying in, this is a conceptual land use plan that was developed and reviewed by the committee. And essentially, if you kind of see along here is tying in, so there's a few different land use districts shown. One is kind of this darker color here, which is your kind of wine industry or your viticulture land use designation that's specifically tailored to allow the vineyards and other commercial activities that support the wineries along here. And then a green space or open space designated area that would preserve the Wilson Creek Channel and kind of keeping that all as a naturalized feature. And then as part of the residential capacity, as I mentioned, consolidating the residential units is two different two different residential districts. We have the villas and then the estates being the larger lots along the periphery of the specific land, really tying in where there's existing neighborhoods, so using larger lots in that location. And then other areas, especially those that interface with the open space elements, using a little bit smaller lots of 10,000 square feet or greater to facilitate that. And then that would be localized within the interior of the specific land, not necessarily next to any existing neighborhoods. And so as I mentioned, the three kind of primary land use districts, the agriculture, this is specifically for implementing the wine country, and so would include grape growing as the primary use within it. However, recognition that olives are part of kind of the wine tasting ambiance and, you know, part of that environment of a wine country that would also be a permitted use. And then also creating kind of a tiered approach so that the larger the vineyard, the more commercial activity you can have. If you're a smaller size, then you're really more limited to your retail sales of your grapes. Residential, as I mentioned, the villas of 10,000 square feet within kind of the interior of the specific plan, and then the estates, which are half-acre minimums, located along the periphery to tie in with existing neighborhoods. And then the open space elements, the specific plan is going to accommodate a few different elements. One is the naturalization or maintaining the naturalized feature at Wilson Creek Channel, and then also providing a number of different trail connectivity opportunities to El Dorado and to the north and south of the specific plan area, and really using trails as kind of the buffering between the agricultural uses and neighborhoods that are proposed. And then I do want to note just quickly that the boundaries are shown for reference. Exact boundaries may vary slightly based on individual proposals and site grading that needs to be accommodated, provided that the overall acreage is maintained. And so this is an illustrative site plan that kind of shows how this would translate as a land use exhibit or map of these kind of different areas. And I do want to note one of the key discussions as part of the implementation of the land use plan, it was a kind of 50-50 split. So making sure that the residential land area was not the majority of the development area, but really providing an opportunity to maximize vineyard space within the area. So as you have so much land to work with, the more area you have for vineyards, the less area you have for residential or open space, and making sure that there was a balance between the three different elements to find kind of the perfect medium to support the largest amount of vineyard creation that would be feasible. And then as part of it, we had developed a kind of phasing plan. It isn't necessarily the way things will be built, but it just provides a logical idea of how things may get developed, so that as we're working through the infrastructure elements of the specific plan document, this at least gives a kind of a baseline of how things may kind of proceed. So Oakland Road, and then working your way north to the top. And so want to quickly cover kind of the areas of consensus. As I mentioned, this is all about getting community feedback through the process and really trying to find the ideas or requirements that would be best supported by the community as a whole. And so as I mentioned, the 50-50 ratio between residential and non-residential, it's been calculated by phase, and it excludes existing public streets. And one of the kind of approaches that was taken as well is splitting these areas within under common ownership to the extent possible, so that if you're a property owner that's looking to develop their property, you're not being subject to one requirement or the other. It provides an opportunity for them to do both, so then that way they're more likely to be engaged in the process through that development and being able to create winery space from there. And as I mentioned, there is a tiered winery approach with 3 different winery categories identified. One is a micro winery, which is the smallest scale of a minimum requirement of 2.5 acres, an artisan winery, which is kind of the medium or kind of the Goldilocks of the wineries of 5 acres, and then the boutique winery of 10 acres or greater. And then some of the other areas of consensus, as I mentioned, was the minimum vivification of 75% within all categories, and then a 100-foot separation between any residential lots and residential structures and agriculture to make sure that there isn't a land use incompatibility with it. And this was identified both by the committee as well as a survey as well that supported that number. And so I want to quickly just kind of show some visual representation. So this is the micro winery, the 2.5 acre one. As part of that, with the minimum 2.5 acres, essentially this lot would have over 81,000 square feet of vineyards on site, and essentially would be allowed essentially a smaller scale tasting room, the wine production facility, and then the retail sales of that winery. One of the provisions or discussions of the committee was not to allow the micro winery along Oakland Road. Any properties developed for wineries on Oakland Road would have a minimum size of 5 acres. And then this is the artisan winery does allow a little bit more commercial activities, and then as part of that 5 acres, at least 163,000 square feet would be developed with grapes or other ag uses. And then as part of this, as I mentioned, a little bit more activity, so special event venues may be permitted, so you may have weddings on site or other kind of smaller stuff with maximum guests of 75, and then you may also provide food opportunities, so some dining, some tasting of food pairings between the wine and that facility would also be permitted. And then the last one is kind of the boutique winery, which allows a little bit of the largest scale with a minimum of 10 acres, provides a couple 100,000 square feet of vineyards on that property to be developed. And then as part of it does allow a little bit larger events, and then also allows for overnight accommodations with kind of small bungalow resorts. So someone could stay there, have a wedding, have the wedding party stay there overnight, and that would be something that would be allowed with this largest scale event and winery location. And then as part of it, I do want to note the committee did review the winery development standards. And so this kind of covers some of the different components, the 2.5 acres, 5 acres, 10. And then some of the setbacks, I do want to note, this is in the staff report, an updated table was provided that had corrected the setbacks. And so I want to note just quickly that this table here is what has been provided following the publication of the agenda. The only element that had not been reviewed yet, but certainly seeking direction, is as part of the event venues and everything like that, is the Artisan Winery having a rear yard setback of 50 feet and then Boutique Winery 100 feet. However, other key elements is 150-foot separation of any buildings for a winery off of Oakland Road, so making sure that when you're on Oakland Road, all you see is vineyards for the most part. And then certainly kind of having a larger corridor of vineyards along any streets, and then you could have some of the buildings closer to other winery sites once you're within the specific plan area. And then also recommended some parking standards for these facilities as well. And then want to also cover, so as we talked about this area, the specific lands covering kind of 3 different land uses. One is the open space, the wineries, and then the last part is the residential regulations, calculated by phase with no increase in residential unit capacity. The 2 different residential types, a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size within the villas, and then half acres along the periphery for the estates. As part of the committee, they did review a few other components. One is related to park developments. The committee did provide consensus that individual parks would not be required within the specific plan. However, applicants would be responsible for any upfront park fees towards 5 Winds, since a lot of the trail connections will tie into that facility. And then they would also be responsible for the trail development within the specific plan. And then the final development standards are still in progress, and so the committee did vote at the last meeting to form a subcommittee specifically to develop the residential development standards with 3 committee members, or 4 committee members. One is from City Council, which is Mayor Avila, a Plan Commissioner, which is Chris Martarian, the property owner, Jonathan Weldy, and then the at-large member of Tony Matlock. And they'll work through kind of developing the specific residential standards and then provide that back in the following meeting for the committee at large and City Council. And then, but the committee did weigh in on a few different components. One is making sure that's larger size units of minimum 2,200 square feet consistent with a custom home overlay, making sure that the design standards do allow for creative streetscape appearance, and then making sure that the custom home overlay provisions requiring a number of different floor plans and elevations are also carried through. And then the committee also did note that some objective design standards should be in place, specifically in response to state law that does limit discretion on certain residential projects, and then also on ADUs, making sure that any ADUs that do get built within this area have the same architectural design as the residents. So making sure that whatever we can control and encourage high quality residential design is implemented. Now, I did want to just kind of quickly note, so this is kind of exhibit before. This is kind of the existing development that has been approved in the North Bench area within the specific plan. The property owner that owns this property was looking at it and then provided kind of a mock-up kind of concept, taking the standards that the committee had weighed in on and just wanted to kind of see what that may kind of look like. And so this shows what's existing, obviously no vineyard space, the Wilson Creek channel essentially within yards. And then this kind of shows kind of a potential layout or comparison just to kind of start playing with bubbles and seeing what does the specific plan kind of look like on individual properties. And so this gives, I think, kind of a good picture of what is currently in place and then kind of ideas on how this can be implemented as part of the specific plan. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Certainly this is to solicit feedback on kind of where we're at, recommendations received thus far, and give us direction as we prepare the specific plan. I do also want to note an email from our Vice Chair, Donna Snodgrass, was provided at the meeting. I did speak with her. Part of her comment was in regards to, I guess, some rumors that the specific plan was all said and done and finalized. And so that caught her by surprise and was a bit of a concern. As noted tonight, we have developed kind of a consensus of different standards and certainly looking for feedback from council. And then as she also noted, and I'll kind of paraphrase, you know, she had noted that there's been a lot of progress made and looking forward to finishing the specific. So just wanted to note that for the record based on the email that was provided. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you.
Thank you. Before we go ask questions of staff, I'd ask my colleagues to indulge me for 90 seconds. In 2012, I had the honor of being on the General Plan Committee, And I drew up a rough draft of our vision statement, which was eventually refined to reflect the following. Yucaipa is a jewel of the Inland Empire. Framed by the San Bernardino Mountains, Yucaipa's natural environment, with its cleaner air and unique topography, distinguishes the exceptional quality of life. Yucaipa offers an attractive, peaceful, and safe community for all of its residents. Yucaipa is thoroughly planned, balancing the needs of residents, the environment, and the business community. Quality public facilities, schools, community services, and other amenities draw residents and visitors of all ages to live, work, play, and retire in Yucaipa. It's ironic how our state is whittling away our ability to determine how we want to develop. I think this project may be one of the last few that we have where we have an actual say on what we want to see our community become. So as we ask our questions and make suggestions, please keep in mind what our vision was: a nice environment, peaceful community where we can all live, work, and play. And with that, gentlemen, I open it up for questions of staff. Are there any? Mayor Pro Tem Beaver.
Do we have any public comment on the matter?
We do, but we'll do that after we have any questions.
At this moment, I have no question.
Maybe I missed it. Will the specific plan supersede the requirements of SB 9?
So currently under SB 9, there is, unlike the ADU provisions, which essentially usurp any CCNRs and HOA regulations regarding, creation of ADUs, SB 9 does not. So as part of the specific plan, there is still the potential for regulations that limit or prevent SB 9 urban lot splits from being permitted within the specific plan. And then certainly as part of the development standards, having the building placement that would preclude the ability for someone to do an urban lot split that conforms with kind of that shared or similar lot, size requirement could be implemented as well. So this could be a vessel to help safeguard against SB 9 programs in the future, or SB 9 applications in the future.
So you don't believe that they'll come back and try to split it from, say, if it's 20,000 to 10?
Within the specific plan?
Correct.
As part of the specific plan, as part of the CCNRs and everything like that, that can be created to preclude that from occurring.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we have 5 speakers. I'd like to remind you, we have 3 minutes each. And when you come up to the microphone, speak clearly and state your name and address. We'll start with the first speaker, Ray Snodgrass. Retired CAL FIRE chief, by the way.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
I'm proud of you for that.
Good evening, council members. Congratulations first to Councilmember Avila for being elected as mayor, and to Justin Beaver as a pro tem. And thank you, Mr. Past Mayor and Mr. Past Vice or Pro Tem, for your service. My comments will be very brief. Ray Snodgrass, 10345 Walnut Grove Court, Yucaipa. First off, since I have the microphone, I think there's a provision in SB 9 for exclusion in high fire hazard severity zones, or it may be SB 10. You may want to look at that, because I think much of the North Bench and a lot of the areas in the foothills would be excluded by definition, if that holds true. My wife does serve on the committee, on the PC, and she did convey some comments to you. I did talk to her later in the day after we both read the agenda item, and actually we're quite pleased with the progress, and we commend the committee and the committee members for the endeavors. It's not 100% panacea of any one group, but there's compromise, and I think the commitment to vinify a percentage of the parcels for the developers and landowners is a big step. And I've been very critical in the past of the so-called clustered housing. And by definition, I don't like it. I don't think that it's the appropriate thing to do, but following the guidelines that have been proposed, at least in the portion that's been done so far, it looks very favorable. So continue on with the good work as a committee. I would like to suggest that maybe some of the open space in the corridor, especially in the Wilson Creek corridor, may be able to have vineyards, still leaving open space and trails, and maybe additional vineyards in there if it doesn't violate any provisions imposed by the Army Corps of Engineers, which I have no idea what that limitation is for that particular parcel. So my congratulations to staff and to the committee members and to the council for really changing course, following our recommendation that the name be changed, which thank you for that, and continue on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Tony Matlock.
Thank you. My name is Tony Matlock. I live on 34088 Lake Breeze Drive, Yucaipa. And again, I would like to thank the City Council and the staff for the investment in resources and time that they've put into this activity. This is no simple undertaking, and the efforts are greatly appreciated. Having participated in the monthly meetings, I appreciate the professionalism and the knowledge of the staff and of the other members that are being brought to the table to discuss and make recommendations as to the course of actions. Through my daily activities, I'm in the wine business, I meet a number of people that are commenting on the city's efforts in this area and that they are looking forward to seeing it through. I encourage you to continue to support the development of the Yucaipa Valley Wine Country Vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kevin Brooks.
My name is Kevin Brooks, 1745 East Harmony Way, Santan Valley, Arizona. Honorable Mayor, Council, Wine Country Committee members, city staff, and residents. As I mentioned, my name's Kevin Brooks, Yucaipa High, class of 1980. I'd like to commend you on your work to date on considering the Wine Country specific plan. I represent the group that is currently in escrow to purchase the Casablanca Ranch property. I previously looked at the 184 approved lots without interest as it mapped over the entire site. It did not provide for a scenic corridor on Oakland Road, and it did not dedicate significant open space. I believe the direction that you're considering provides a much better land plan and to all the stakeholders, including the budding wine industry, the trail and open space constituency, current and future residents, current landowners, and the city as a whole. I have a unique career that I've been involved with residential development, many in this city, agriculture and artisan ventures, along with being an avid outdoorsman. As a side note, I'm currently training for the Grand Canyon Rim to Rim hike, so I certainly understand the need for trails and open space. I have followed the work of the Wine Planning Committee. While it's been some speed bumps along the line, I commend them for their efforts, their passion, and their progress made to date. While at times it appears that they're competing agendas, I believe there is more in common than not. The potential for residential, agriculture, and open space to work in concert with each other makes each individual component stronger. As currently approved, developing the entire parcel with residential development would be a lost opportunity in my opinion. The open space and the agricultural use is an important amenity for the residential component. Without freeing up the acreage for these uses, for the citizenship and the community, they'd be lost to development. I'm excited about the direction the process has taken. Our group has prepared the conceptual land use plans to be believed to be in the spirit of the direction the committee and the city is looking for. No one group or individual will get everything they want, but I believe it's heading in the right direction. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Jonathan Welding.
My name is Jonathan Welding. The address is 19153 Town Center Drive, Apple Valley. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. First off, thank you. Thank you for your vision in this process. How do we put 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound sack? Your vision put it into a committee. Your committee invested time in the community, and I appreciate your appointment to represent large landowners on this second process. Anytime you have passionate people that are working on a complicated issue, there's going to be spirited debate. And I commend the committee for allowing these conversations to consensus, not always unanimous, but majority consensus. And I especially commend my fellow committee members for respectful debate. We're currently in escrow, as you saw. Pending owner has studied it, and I think there's one slide here that represents what the standards we've put together could be. So 50%, and then allocations to open space, residential, opportunity for wineries of different sizes, and then reservation of the Blue Line Stream and open space with trails. We agree with the staff recommendation. We've communicated with Laird, which is the 320 acres above us, directly north to us, and I think they sent in an email in support of this concept. I went over these slides with them today and have been regularly keeping them updated on the progress of the committee. We look forward to being involved through the rest of the process. We support the staff recommendation. We'll do everything we can to be involved productively in the design guideline establishment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, final speaker is Terry Boone.
Hello, my name is Terry Boone. I live at 9794 Yucaipa Ridge Road, Yucaipa. I live directly across the street from 52 acres, and I've seen on the North Bench, and I've seen the development that's proposed to go in across the street from me. My concern is I don't want to see increased density of population. So like at Stanley Ranch across Bryant, every lot is not 1 acre like it's zoned, but there's enough open space that, for instance, across the street from me, there's 52 acres. They're going to build 52 houses, but most of it's going to be vineyards, so the lots are going to be smaller. I don't have a problem with that as long as we're not going to increase the density of housing in the areas where we're going to do it. So that's the promise that I would like to have, all right? I have lived in Yucaipa for 29 years. I built my house there, bought the lot and built the house, and about 2.5 years ago, I bought 7 acres and a 3,000 square foot home in Texas, where my daughter lives. A year ago, I sold that land because I decided I was going to stay in Yucaipa, and this is what I would like to see, not an increased density in houses. Okay?
Thank you. That's it for public comment. Are there any questions or comments for staff? Nothing further?
I've said this before. This is obviously something that's come before us before in the last year. If this was the Justin show, there wouldn't be any houses up there. So I don't want to see them up there. I'd rather see vines and olive trees than open space. With that said, this isn't the Justin show. It actually resembles more of the Gavin Newsom show. And we have to build houses. So I'm actually a little confused because I just heard something that said if there's 52 acres, there'll be 52 houses, but most will be vineyards. I'm not entirely sure that's accurate, because while a person can plant vineyards on their property, there is no mandate that I know of that can force somebody to buy a 1 acre piece of property and require them to plant vineyards on that property. What, in my experience, is more likely is that property will find itself being used to store things. I can see the North Bench from where I live, and I'd rather not see it all cluttered with houses from the foothills to Oakland Road. I'm a strong advocate of outdoors and open space and conservancy, and I'm as this continues, I'm looking forward to seeing or talking to people to figure out how in the world we can put the number of houses on the North Bench and still have open space, trails, conservancy in that Wilson Creek area. I think it was said well, putting 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound sack. Never been good at math, which is probably why I became a cop. I don't see how it will work. What I do know for certain is I'm going to be opposed to any type of plan that comes to this council where there's houses from the hills to Oakland Road and everything in between, whether it's on 1 acre lots or not. I would rather see it with more green and open space and doing our best to engineer the houses that the state requires we build or allow to be built, hidden the best we can behind something that is more pleasant to the eye: vineyards, olive trees, trails, and open spaces. So I'm as transparent as can be. That's where I stand. I'll defend it, and that's where I'm going to be pushing for.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Well, which council members are on the committee? You guys have comment? I'd like to hear what the committee members have to say.
So I was involved in phase 1. And I was also involved in phase 2. And it was a fun experience for me. I didn't get to say a lot because there was a lot being said, and I didn't want to push my point on anyone. But to Mayor Pro Tem Beaver's comments, reality is the property owners have a right to build the number of houses that they have a right to build. The committee did a great job. It was a little bit controversial at times, but did a great job, and I really appreciate the work that everyone did. And what we've come up with, I think, today is a plan to cluster houses. And initially, when we started, the word cluster was thrown around a lot, and then I've noticed that it's kind of phased out a little bit. But the idea is to reduce the size of the lots, put them in the center of the property, and kind of hide them from view. That's kind of the whole idea. And the smaller the lot, obviously, you can get the right number of houses. And when I say the right number of houses, the state is going to require, and you've heard it all night tonight, they're going to require us not to downsize the quantity, but rather to build that many if the land, if the zoning will allow it. I think what the committee's done and the plans that they put together and the putting the houses in the center, surrounding it with vineyards, making provision for 2.5, 5 acre, 10 acre vineyards or wineries along the outside edge, and trying to conceal as much of the houses as possible with trees, olive trees, or a perimeter of trees. The idea here is, and what the committee has come up with, is a plan to adequately build the right number of houses and then camouflage that from view with as many amenities as we can come up with. And that's kind of what my take on what we've come up with on the committee is to put them in the middle and build around it with trees and vines and all kinds of and trails and open space. And that's kind of what we've come up with. And I'm proud of what we've come up with. I think it's a good plan. I'm excited about the subcommittee going forward with the architectural, and that's kind of where we're at. That makes sense?
Got it.
Perfect sense. There's not much more I can add except for maybe two things. If we look at the screen right now, this is a representation of what Councilmember Duncan was talking about, where we have vineyards and our housing element will be somewhere in between or in the middle of that. Ben, if you can go to that one map or PowerPoint that shows the lot split of 1 acre each. I think that's it. That is something similar to what's been approved.
Yes, that's correct.
And that is, all that takes right now, should the owner of that map, that's a tentative, approved tentative map, and the owner could easily just record that and it's a done deal. We don't have any choices. So thankfully, we've been working with the owner, Mr. Weldy, and representation, and we've come up with, if you go back to the other one, something similar to this is what we're trying to shoot for. So we're going to have vineyards around, and as Councilmember Duncan, we'll camouflage it or hide it in such a way where it'll not be too apparent, and then we'll have some housing. The landowner has rights. He can build all those houses there if he so chooses, but we're working together in order to come with a reasonable compromise that will benefit our community. And again, if we go back to what our vision was, this may achieve it a lot more amicably for everybody rather than the 1 acre minimum lots that was tentatively approved.
And Denise Allen and I went up to the North Cork Winery on Saturday evening, and we took a look at what Preston Todd has developed up there. And not only are we trying to build the right number of houses and camouflage that and make it continue to have the rural look, this is economically, this whole wine industry concept, Preston said that an acre of grapes, I can't remember, I think he said it would produce $60,000 a year, an acre of grapes with the fruit that comes off of the vines. Every acre that we put in the ground, once it starts producing, will produce $60,000 in wine annually. This is not only a good idea as far as us accommodating the state and maintaining our rural look, but economically for the city of Yucaipa, this is absolutely rock star status because it will allow our tourists, you've got Oak Glen, you've got the wine country, and it's going to provide a destination. It's going to put, I think, Yucaipa on the map as far as the renowned wine that they're going to produce. Preston Todd believes that that ground will produce some of the best wine around. And I don't know if that's true or not because I know nothing about wine. But the bottom line is this is a great plan. This is a great idea in many ways, not just for the housing element.
So I need to have some, I guess I do have some questions. Ben, I'm sorry, can you go back to the approved tentative track map? Where would the vineyards go in this one?
It doesn't. This was never designed to be vineyards.
So how do we accommodate 1 acre lots and have vineyards?
We can't.
Okay, so then my question is, and my apologies for the redundancy, but I want to make sure I'm clear. If we reduce to 1/4 acre lots, this is so that we can squeeze more houses in the area, so we can maybe build another 1,000 houses, right?
No, the same number of houses are considered in the proposed specific plan as are approved in the existing tentative maps or under those that don't have a tentative map, the general plan designation. So the idea is to match the number of houses,
So
not
100
increase the
houses is 100 houses if they're on a quarter lot or an acre,
So if
full
you,
lot. Okay.
exactly, so if you reduce the size, then you make room for the vineyards.
I thought that was the case. I just wanted to hear somebody say it.
Yeah.
So what we're doing by, if we reduce the lot sizes, we're maintaining our requirements through the People's Republic of California.
No, it's the developer, not, the developer has the right to build so many houses as approved.
I understand, but we have no net loss by
That's what you're
doing this.
saying.
And the freed up land is going towards vineyards, agriculture, open space, trails.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And while I realize that most people don't trust government, I know the concern has been that if we reduce the size of the lots in this specific plan, then we're going to rush out to build a lot more houses than what's designated. That's absolutely not the case, and it's going to be specified in the plan that that can't be done. So we're going to make sure that whether it's this council or future councils or future staff, that can't be done in the specific plan.
Yeah, and if I may kind of, I guess, highlight that provision as whatever the 100 lots allowed on a property, that doesn't change. It really is using more creative standards to essentially create new ad land that under the existing conditions would not exist. Same with the open spaces, really being much more deliberate on getting these other land uses that are desired by the community in place and then allowing the flexibility and the standards to help see that come to fruition. And then as Councilmember Duncan references, the specific plan and the implementation would have, conservation easements or other provisions that would limit someone from, let's say taking half the property for vineyards and then turn around, build more houses on it. It would be whatever the capacity is today stays, but it's not being increased or modified. It's more or less to provide an avenue for vineyard creation.
Well, if I recall, were you guys on council when we approved the 1 acre parcels?
I was.
You were, David, were you both? Yeah. This was one vote that I'll never forget because I know can you go back to the 1 acre? So there were two proposals, this was a number of years ago, for this parcel. And one of them was the same amount of houses. In fact, I think it was a few less than what was actually up here. And it had open space, and it was actually kind of nice. It was a nice proposal. And I never forget that we actually argued ourselves into this terrible proposal that's right here. And I'll never forget that that's what we did.
We got significant pushback from the public.
We got pushback and we argued ourselves into this horrendous map here. The other one with all the open space was far superior, but that's what we ended up with. I'm glad that that's not built because I think that's terrible. And I think what we're doing here, although it could be tweaked and there should be some, we definitely need to look at a few things. I think we're on the right track. And I'm going to support this project. I am a little concerned. I don't want to go below, what are we at on the minimum lot size?
The villas would be 10,000 square feet or greater.
And there's no way that that's going to go below there?
That is a provision that has been discussed with the committee and received the consensus support. And so that is what would provide a direction from council tonight would be what is maintained moving forward.
And this is not to say that all the parcels are going to be 10,000 square feet. We need to work out those details where we have a minimum of 10,000, but we also need to bring in half, 3/4, and 1 acre lots too as a mix. So it's not all just 10,000 square foot houses, which is nothing more than, another version of Chapman Heights. And we're trying to avoid that. We want some diversity, if you will, and some interest. So it looks like we've got a nice rural feel community.
Quick question for staff. If a proposal like we've seen tonight were to get approved and vineyards go in, is there any kind of mechanism in place to ensure that vineyards that go into those areas are being maintained at a certain level, so that they maintain a certain appearance and possibly to hope alleviate any kind of fire concerns of them being run down, dried out, things of that nature.
Well, we do have those types of maintenance requirements for other types of land uses in the community where the city can step in and require that the maintenance be upgraded, and we can certainly, if that's council's direction, apply those to this specific plan as well.
Currently, in response to your question, currently, there is a organization being formed by Caesar Roldan and Preston Todd. It's going to be a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit, and any land that the developers want to dedicate, or anyone that wants to dedicate land to this nonprofit, Caesar is really good at planting grapes and maintaining grapes. The idea is that this nonprofit would then take responsibility for the land and ensure the land is used properly and not dying out. So that's not completely solidified yet, but that is the plan on the table right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we have 2 items here to direct staff to proceed with developing the Kaipa Valley Wine Country Specific Plan, following directions to staff that council deems appropriate. Do you have anything that we want to add? Or do you have enough information right now?
I think we have enough information in terms of the input. We would need a vote to proceed with the preparation of the specific plan. And generally, that's the overall specific plan, and then there's a second action that
To
deals with
approve the
architect-
structure?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, the second part is to approve the structure membership of the Architectural Design Subcommittee, which will consist of.
I make a motion that we direct staff to go ahead and continue on developing the specific plan in conjunction with the input from the committee and also the input from the subcommittee that's been appointed. And I also approve item 2 on this item is to approve the subcommittee as it's been designated.
Okay.
So this specific plan, we will still have to review and approve for the record, correct?
Correct. The plan would be to come back to you with a draft specific plan at some point. And again, the design guidelines would be kind of a separate parallel process. The specific plan development itself would be done with some input from the design subcommittee.
And input from the city council.
We'll come back to you,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
Once we've received
Okay.
that input, yeah.
All right.
And planning commission, of course.
Okay.
But
Okay,
normally, we would come back to city council with something of this magnitude first, make sure that we're on the right track, so.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
First and second, if no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, I think that's it for public. Before we go, I guess we have some closed session items.
We still have
Successor
successor agency and the housing authority.
You know,
It's on the agenda, but not the.
I don't have the agenda. I was just going off this thing. I apologize. In a hurry here. I want to get home to my flooded house. Okay. All right, we're adjourned to city council and convene the successor agency. Do I read this, or is that something that, Jennifer, do you read this?
I can give the staff report.
Okay.
So open the, all right,
Yes,
so I'll call to
please.
order the December 13th meeting of the successor agency. And agenda item 1.
Thank you. This item is similar to the council appointment of mayor and mayor pro tem. The positions, once the chair and vice chair is appointed, it will become effective in January. So at this time, I will open the nominations for office of chairperson.
I nominate Councilman Bogue.
Well, I nominate Mayor Pro Tem Beaver.
I think I already am.
Well, I think you should continue.
You already are, yeah.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm
Okay,
okay.
we have a nomination for Councilmember Bogue. And I think there was one for Councilmember Beaver, or Mayor Pro Tem Beaver.
So at first, I'll go with Councilmember Bogue. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Councilmember Bogue is now the chairperson for the successor agency. This time, I'll open the nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Councilman Duncan.
I nominate Councilmember Thorpe.
Any other nominations? Okay, I'll close the nominations. All those in favor of Mr. Duncan for vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
I think I heard two. All those in favor of Mr. Thorpe as vice chair?
Aye.
That's three, so congratulations, Vice Chairperson Thorpe. So they'll take the position starting in January, so you'll continue to
understood.
run this section of the meeting.
Okay, well then let's move on to agenda number 2. Approve the successor agency minutes of February 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, approve, can we do these all at once or do we have to do them individually? Individually it is. Approve the successor agency minutes of June 28th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, approve the successor agency minutes of November 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Agenda item number 5, recognize obligation payment schedule for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Is there a staff report on this?
We can
or
give you a
is-
very brief staff
Andrew.
report on that one.
Yeah.
Chair, Mr. Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, members of the directors, rather, of the agency, successor agency. This item is the ROPS, is the acronym. Each year, this successor agency receives a report from staff to receive and file this ROPS. It's AKA the budget for this. This is presented to the County Oversight Board. That's going to be on the agenda January 10th. I will be in attendance and make that presentation. The majority components of this annual budget are the ongoing obligations, the debt service, and the administrative budget. You can see that in the fiscal impact summary, and it has the proposed budget and variances. And with that, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions of staff?
So move.
Motion by Councilmember
I'll
Bogue.
second.
Second by Councilmember Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And with that, I will adjourn the successor agency of December 13th.
Your turn, John.
Okay, with that, we'll start the open the Housing Authority. Item number 1, Yucaipa Housing Authority recognition. We need to choose a new chair and vice chair.
I nominate Bobby Duncan.
I'll nominate anybody but me. Greg Book.
You don't want to vote?
I'll second Bobby Duncan on that one.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing one, sounds all in favor for Commissioner Duncan to
Aye.
serve as the chair?
Aye.
I think congratulations are in order. Okay, at this time now, I'll open the nominations for vice chair.
I nominate John Thorpe.
I nominate Greg Bogue.
Can the mayor also be,
Why didn't
I
you
see
speak up a
yes.
couple of minutes ago?
say what?
Why didn't you speak up a couple of minutes ago?
Well, I don't want to be chair. No, I'll be the vice chair. I mean, I don't mind being nominated for the vice chair of this position.
I
or
would
the
like to
chair.
nominate Mayor Avila for the vice chair position.
So now we have 3.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations. All those in favor for Commissioner Thorpe? Serve
Aye.
as vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, at this time, I'll, for Bogue as vice chair?
Aye.
Okay, and Commissioner Avila as vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm not sure how that works.
Can I vote twice?
Can you
Aye.
vote twice?
I've already ayed once, so I can't aye again, can I?
You can vote again.
Aye.
I'm pretty sure Mayor Avila took that one.
Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gets moving.
Commissioner Avila will serve as vice chair.
All right, congratulations to all. I guess we'll close the,
Now you have
No, I've
to
got
do
a couple more points.
to do his meeting minutes.
All right, number 2, approve the Housing Authority minutes for March 8th of 2021.
I move. I second.
First and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 3, approve Housing Authority minutes for June 28th of 2021.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And lastly, number 4, approve Housing Authority minutes for November 22nd, 2021.
I move approval.
I
First
second.
and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with that, we will adjourn the Housing Authority, convene back to the City Council meeting.
And city council is open. Do we have any final announcements? Captain, have you heard any updates on the North Bench? Chief?
Sure. So we're anticipating heavy rainfall coming into the Kaipa area, and that's significantly increased. I actually work with National Weather Service Ops Center, and we get up-to-minute briefings from them. And looking at that in our work reports for watershed, we're definitely be at or exceeding thresholds for a long duration. So we're going to have, it's broken down into even 15-minute intervals. It's not a cumulative rainfall, but that could be a factor. So we're definitely going to be at or exceeding thresholds for a very long duration. That's tomorrow. The window of concern is tomorrow from 10 a.m. till about 5 p.m. tomorrow, where they're calling for anywhere up to 3/4 inch of rain an hour, with a cumulative of 6+ inches of rain. So we are anticipating debris flow. We do have a command post set up at the Yucaipa Community Center. We have a OES pre-position approved for a USAR and a Swiftwater rescue team, and then we're staffing on the city side. Myself as the incident commander, but ops section chief, division group soups. We already have all that staffing lined out. So we are expecting debris flow tomorrow.
Is that a joint command post at the community center with the sheriff's office as well?
It is, and San Bernardino County Fire. So they're the largest stakeholder, so they really need to take the lead on this, especially on they have the largest fiscal responsibility, but yeah. And expecting a lot of rain tomorrow.
Okay.
A lot of rain, a lot of mud, and hopefully people heed the warning.
I was going to ask if there's anything you'd like to say with respect to the anticipated rainfall and flooding.
Absolutely. So when we look at it, we're not going to save folks by coming in there and getting fast after a whole hillside release. People need to leave the area. That's how they're going to protect themselves and their family. And it's really hard with these, and we, Captain Williams and I are really trying to make it not become white noise because we haven't had it happen yet. And it's not like a wildfire. Those are easy, like, hey, you need to evacuate your home. Why? Well, there's 300-foot flames. This doesn't build up, it's silent. You don't see it until it's already done and it's too late. So we're really hoping people heed those warnings, and we don't take it lightly to evacuate 5,000 people. Yeah, we don't take that lightly, and that's in the best interest of the public. So hopefully folks get out, and that's why we really have that goal of a 48, 24, 12 to give them that reflex time. That's why 2 days of clear skies, and we already have evac warnings out. Clear skies today, we have an evac order out, and tonight county is going to start putting road closures in Oak Glen and staking K-rails and stuff like that in anticipation. We don't want to wait till 8 a.m. in the morning or midnight and say, hey, you need to get out of your house in the next 2 hours. We have to have the reflex time for the public. So it is dire, and I'm dreading tomorrow. So.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I think Captain Williams also has something to add.
Well, I think Chief Malinowski explained some of what I wanted to get at. So we got some pushback on issuing the order today when the event is going to occur tomorrow. And I just wanted to explain for the public, there's a reason behind that, and that's because it takes time to evacuate, especially if you have animals, large animals, horses, that kind of thing. So the point of issuing the evacuation order roughly just after 2 o'clock this afternoon was to allow people time before the rains are actually going to start tonight. So it's going to start getting difficult to move your horses around or go find your elderly relatives and make sure that they're safe. It's going to take time, and it's going to be in inclement weather starting tonight. So I have additional personnel. I've got additional deputy sheriffs that are working on notifications. Obviously, we're most concerned about Oak Glen, Forest Falls, the Oak Glen Road corridor there along Birch Creek. And so we're taking kind of a phased approach. We're starting where we think we're really going to have a problem, a definite problem, and then we'll work our way more into the more developed parts of the city probably tomorrow morning. But we have our search and rescue teams are out. They're assisting us with the notifications, and we have additional deputy sheriffs working. So people shouldn't be concerned if they, we want them to be safe. And so they shouldn't be concerned about, abandoning their homes, and we're going to have, problems come in behind that. So we do have deputies working in those areas.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief Malinowski, also. Okay, so just for the news mirror, put it out. People need to be prepared. Get ready. It's coming.
Mr. Mayor, I think Fermin has a couple things to add to that relative to Public Works and availability of sandbags and that sort of thing. So.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple things to add. As Ray mentioned, there are sandbags available for the public at all 3 fire stations. That has been announced to the public, so just wanted to get that out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other announcements? Hearing none, seeing none, we have a closed session, at least one item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We have one item on this evening's agenda, a closed session agenda. It's conference with legal counsel regarding threatened litigation. It's pursuant to 54956.9D3. We've received a written threat of litigation. It's available for inspection upon request. And with that, we'll adjourn to closed session.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the public for the day. We'll now close the open session, move to close.